It may be of interest to you to know that the Oologist is the best advertising medium with which we exchange. Replies came in answer to our advertisements for almost every state in the Union, as well as Canada. And that was written from a man in Detroit, Michigan. We're talking Detroit, Michigan, we're talking Canada, we're talking all over the, and he lived here in Albion and in the town of Gaines.
This is before he was on.
Yeah. Yeah. I have left the following: a number 1 bird skins, 6 American crow, 3 blue jay, 1 least bittern pour, 2 cedar waxwings, pine grosbeak females, 13 snowflake, 2 purple finch females, 1 white-breasted nuthatch, 1 black-throated green warbler. I will send the above 33 skins and add 2 of the gray squirrel and 1 very fine mounted crow. Entire lot is cheap at $10. I'll bring them all and express at purchaser's expense for only $5.75. That's from Frank Lattin in Albion, New York. And it goes on and explains what he sells and how much, but I thought it was interesting to hear how much he was charging. And people were writing to him and saying, yes, I want one of these, one of those, and one of those over there. Let's see, the prices listed for eggs range from 3 cents for that of a cowbird to $225 for that of the California vulture. So you got a range to pick from.
Well, we're getting there.
Yeah. The second most costly, that of a swallow-tailed kite for $25. Others of interest: Eskimo curlew, $6. Passenger pigeon, $12. Ivory-billed woodpecker and Bachman's warbler are listed without prices. So maybe they cost more and you had to ask, you know, kind of makes you wonder. So he does make it to the World's Fair, World Exposition, in 1893. And the report on this was in the local papers, said 2 of Orleans County's own were present at the fair, overseeing exhibitions in the anthropology building. Frank Hamilton Cushing, the noted anthropologist and ethnologist who specialized in the study of Zuni Indians in New Mexico, and Frank Lattin, a purveyor of natural specimens and publisher of the Oologist, both participated in the exposition. So in Chicago in 1893, we had 3 local boys exhibiting. I think that's pretty impressive. Lattin's exhibit of natural specimens occupied nearly 2,000 square feet of space, and his participation in the fair provided him with the opportunity to purchase the collections once belonging to Colonel Ezekiel Jewett, consisting of over 50,000 shell specimens. So Frank Lattin's alone display space at the 1893 exposition was 2,000 feet, 2,000 square feet. So that would be kind of like going from where the front desk starts down to Children's and stopping at Children's door, and then expand that width-wise for just his collection. It boggles the mind as far as I'm concerned to think someone local, but he was a wheeler dealer. I mean, he published this magazine monthly with all these things for sale, and his recommendation, if he didn't have it, you could go to so-and-so and get it. Just amazes me that the man was, I guess, that knowledgeable. He did so many things, was a lawyer, you know, a doctor, that, I mean, it just, the things that he learned and the things that he did with his life, I'm exhausted just thinking about it. You know, and yet he went and did this, and I got done with that, and he went over and did this. And he was from Albion, he was from Gaines. I think it's just amazing. At the same exhibition, 10,000 visitors, impressed by the display of the American natural history dealer Frank Lattin, signed up to receive his catalog. Lattin was the editor and publisher of the National Science News, a weekly journal material offered for exchange. In January 1896, he advertised for the sale of a black dolphin, a white shark, and a hammerhead shark, acquired through a swap and all nicely mounted in A1 condition, while ostensibly designed as a marketing and sales tool. Such information in print heightened the company's standing in the trade. I mean, we're talking a shark, a black dolphin. We have expanded from egg collecting. And in July of 1896, it says, and this was in the Medina Tribune, Frank H. Lattin of Gaines has received a diploma and bronze medal from the World's Fair Commissioners for the finest and most perfect display of North American birds' eggs. Mr. Lattin has recently sold his weekly paper devoted to natural history and is now merged with popular science. So our own contributed to popular science also. And, you know, you were asking about his, if any of his things are still around that people could purchase. Well, when I was looking for information, this has the young oologist. He published the Oologist for adults. He published the young oologist for young people who were getting interested in collecting birds' eggs. So he also had that being published too. The young oologist for the students of birds and nests and eggs. They have volume 1 through 58. Okay, for sale, used. They have all these books where these things are bound in, you know, like we have them. Used, $7,454.15. Frank is still making an impression. His obituary was in the Medina Tribune and also in the Albion paper. The services were held on Tuesday for Dr. Frank H. Lattin, prominent Orleans resident who died late Sunday in his Gaines home after a brief illness which followed a stroke. Services were from 154 South Main Street, Albion, the Reverend C.H. Burroughs of Savannah officiating with burial in Mount Albion Cemetery. And this was May 27, 1937. So he died and he's buried in Mount Albion. An editorial in the Orleans Republican from 1937 has the best summary of Dr. Lattin's character. Everything pertaining to natural history attracted him, and he gained a broad knowledge by keen observation of everything about him. Step by step, he broadened and progressed, not by magic, but by his own unswerving integrity and steadfastness. Honorable, possessed of a keen sense of humor, he radiated cheer wherever he might be. His success meant to no man's downfall, hence all loved him and regarded him as a friend. His life touched many others at home and in foreign countries in a business way that culminated in friendship. He was like the sturdy mountain oak whose roots ever deepen into the rich soil until it stands firm and solid against each blast. And that's just Frank Lattin. Now, he was the premier oologist. He was the premier, as you can see, was well known throughout the United States. And as you can see by the cost of a collection of his magazines, still respected in the fields that he was in, because they wouldn't cost that much if nobody thought they were worth it. right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to talk about the other oologist in Orleans County, and that's the man that collected those eggs in our entrance. Those are the ones the lady said she was going to call the police on. I'll tell you, that's one thing I will never forget as long as I because I thought, what is she talking about? And then she was talking about the eggs, and I thought, oh my gosh. Okay, Stuart John Flintham. He's the man who collected the eggs down here that we have on display. His father and Mr. Reynolds, Cassius Reynolds from Albion, and William Flintham, Stuart's father, ran a store in Albion. It was known for dealing in crockery, glassware, furniture, and coffins. They were undertakers also. So the name was known in Albion. Stuart John Flintham was born in 1879 in Albion and died in Los Angeles, California in 1925. His father was, like I said, William Flintham. John Flintham went to Albion High School. He attended Williams College for 2 years as a member of class 1903 on the athletic team and editor of the weekly paper. Attended Cornell Forest School 1901 to 3, member of the athletic team. Senior in Yale School of Forestry. Had a BA, Cornell in 1904. Entered into the Forest Service in June 1904 at Pikes Peak Reservation and soon became Forest Inspector for California. Resigned a position in 1908 to enter business. Forester and Vice President of L.M. Platt Eucalyptus Company in Los Angeles from 1908 to 1911. In 1911, accepted an appointment as Forester for Los Angeles County and held the office until his death. Became Fish and Game Commissioner in 1920 and Fire Warden in 1921. Another man who didn't let the grass grow under his feet. Let's see, he was married November 14th, 1907 in Orange, California to Miss Helen Billingsley of Orange, California, daughter of Ray Billingsley and Eleanor. They have one son, William B. Flintham, born August 17th, 1908 in Los Angeles, California. Flintham entered the Forest Service in 1904, resigned as Forest Inspector of California in July or August of 1908. So he moved from here to California and made his name. The collection that we have, he collected before he left here. So as a young man, he collected the eggs. Let's see, I've got these things that he did in California, but I want to tell you about him. His life was mostly in the forestry after he left here. He went to Yale, and so there was an obituary from Yale University. And it tells that he died in June 10th, 1925 in Los Angeles. It tells his father and his mother. And it went on and it told what I just read you about what he did with his life. And that obituary was in our newspapers, in the Yale magazine, in the newspapers in California. He was well known because of his forestry. But I also want to read to you something from his diary. In his diary, it says, several birds listed in the Flintham records are no longer native to Orleans County. When he was a boy, he would go to the tower in the cemetery and use binoculars and spot where the birds were. And then he knew where to find the nests and did his collecting. Now, he was a teen when he was doing this. He kept a diary, which we have a copy of, where he told about what he saw. And he was quite poetic. The Flintham Diary, May 8th, 1896. A glorious day at last. A chipping sparrow was singing from his perch. He vibrates all over, especially the tail, so that one can hardly follow the beat. I saw warbling vireos everywhere. As the sun gilds the young yellow leaves and drooping blood-red clusters of the soft maples in the same area, the effect is exquisite. And then I heard a wren singing. The red bud, the pear trees, and bridal wreath have blossomed. So he's commentating on what he's seeing as he's collecting these birds' eggs. When it was given, it was after he passed away, and his parents gave his collection to Swan Library in 1928. And it tells, this is March 17th. The Stuart John Flintham collection of birds' eggs and nests was taken from its cases in Swan Library last week for the annual spring dusting. So, and I can remember seeing pictures of Evelyn Lyman, and the headline was Librarian Dust Birds' Eggs. But what they were doing was keeping up with making sure that they were okay and then displaying them. And they displayed them down on outside of the children's library in the hallway where you came in from outside and walked in. They were on either side before you went into the children's library. So unless you had a child, you really didn't know they were there. That's why when we put them out here, everybody went, oh, where'd these come from? Who did this, you know? And it was because they're getting more publicity now. They're seeing more. The collection was presented at Swan Library in 1928 by Mr. and Mrs. W.S. Flintham of South Main Street in memory of their only son, Stuart John Flintham, pioneer of reforestation in California and Nevada. So the birds' eggs were donated to the library for display from William Flintham, from his son, Stuart. Another little tidbit that's interesting is the Flintham house was about where this library is sitting. Just down from the corner, one of the two houses here that were in this area where the library is was the Flintham house. So the birds' eggs have come home from up the street. Because Stuart John Flintham was so prominent in California and forestry and influential, in 1927, the Republican newspaper in Orleans County had this in it. The Republican wishes to state that the details for the following were taken from an account of the Progressive Bulletin, Pomona, California, furnished by Mrs. William Flintham. Stuart J. Flintham, formerly of Albion, was honored by the Los Angeles County, where he had been a forester from 1912 until his death, June 19, 1925, by the unveiling of a tablet marking the memorial plantation of Flintham. This plantation consists of 40 acres of pines and is located 5 miles up the San Dimas Canyon in Los Angeles, California. Formerly, this land was known as the Tan Bark Flats, but as was made a memorial in honor of Mr. Flintham by an act of Congress. The dedication ceremonies were held about the monument of round stone, which bears a bronze tablet setting north the appreciation of the people of Southern California for his great work. The tablet is 13 by 20 inches, and on it is inscribed, dedicated to the memory of Stuart J. Flintham, county forester, 1912 to 1925. The monument is situated in the prominent part of the memorial plantation and may be seen by those traveling on the west side of the San Dimas Canyon. A box is encased containing a record of tan bark flats where the forest plantation was begun. So in California is a monument for an Albion boy who collected those eggs out there. If you pick up the brochure, it's got a picture of the monument with the remembrance of him. In that newspaper, it talks about donated items that you could view at the library. One says, the egg collection given in 1928 by Mr. and Mrs. William Flintham contains 92 varieties of eggs, most of which Stuart Flintham collected in Orleans County during 1893 to 1896. So before the turn of the century, those eggs were collected. Then it goes on to tell us other things, like Lillian and Achilles' collection of dolls. Lillian Achilles was the first head librarian for Swan, and we have a collection of her dolls that she collected, which I want to put out in display in the case one of these days so that we can see what it was she collected. And this was written up in 2014, so 2 years after we moved here. In the 2 glass cases near the entrance of Hoag are dozens of birds' eggs that Flintham collected throughout his teenage years at Albion High School and even into his 20s. The eggs have long been popular in the library, with visitors stopping to look at the eggs that range in size from small stones to softballs. When Flintham collected the eggs, he used a process called egg blowing to remove the insides of the eggs and leave them hollowed out, which leaves a small hole in the shell visible in some of the collections. And I think it's interesting to see that we have a collection that not too many people do have. Museums might have them, but we have an actual collection from our area here. And I think that's remarkable that we can tell what kind of birds lived here, even if they're not here anymore. No. And there's a lot of people that go by with their children, and the children go, "Mom, look at the eggs, look at the eggs." And they are curious. And I've gone over and said to them, they were collected here in Orleans County. And we've got the ostrich egg and the emu egg, which are a lot bigger. They were sent from California. So I think he still had collected those eggs and was so impressed with the size that I'm sure he probably sent them home to add to his collection. So that's...
How did they get here without being cracked?
Well, I don't know. They must have used very good packing around them. Because even if you brought them here yourself, you'd have to be on a train or something. You'd have to have that package so that it wouldn't get disturbed. They were telling one man who was an oologist and collected birds' eggs, had climbed a tree. They didn't say what the guy's name was. Had climbed a tree to get to this nest of birds' eggs. And he got one out that was still good. Put it in his mouth so that it wouldn't break on the way down. Got down on the tree, couldn't get it out of his mouth. He had to have a tooth pulled to get the egg out of his mouth. So these people were very serious about collecting eggs. Anybody have any questions? Thank you very much for listening. Now you're